In this video, I want to articulate some of Sean McPherson's of the FractalEarth Channel's work as it relates to the apocalypse. Sean is a specialist in medical imaging, and his work is separate from mine, which is to say that Sean saw the patterns in the crust and began mapping them across the Earth's surface before he came across my work. In this video, we're going to examine the articulations of an expansion to make the point that an expanding Earth is not only the most logical explanation, but that the cause of the expansion is Venus and the apocalypse itself. We'll begin at the apocalypse near impact point because one of the most prominent articulations of Sean's model is the region of the crust where Venus made electrical contact with the Earth, leaving the Himalayan mountains as a rim found here, indicating a positive charge. This wedge of the resistor represents the current and voltage, the pressure, and the stream of charged particles as the planet Venus came into near impact with the Earth. This wedge was ground zero. Because of the impacting pressure here, the crust began expanding down off of the coast of East Africa, as articulated by Sean here. These lines are showing the distribution of stress in the crust, which left very real articulations in the surface. This line is articulating that this surface feature in the Indian Ocean was caused by the crustal expansion that occurred. Sean's primary claim is that the crust of the Earth expanded like a seashell, which you may or may not know follows the Fibonacci sequence. And like the seashell, the crust expanded linearly. The outer shell is what we see here in this segment. From the east coast of Africa, an expansion occurred in the crust using the same self-similar processes found in a shell. When viewed like this, then the expansion becomes much easier to see. We're going to connect this first junction of the expansion with a second one Sean has identified off the east coast of Australia. Based on my previous work, this vortex represents the center of the eastern paddle of a memristor, a memory resistor that stored the resistance in a crustal expansion. A memory resistor, a memristor, formed directly below the resistor. This is where it belongs in an actual circuit. This vortex of crustal expansion exists as a memory, as a scroll. Thus the pattern that formed Australia looks like the double scroll pattern of a memristor. And the eastern vortex rests directly over the charge junction of this circuit. When we fill in the rest of the circuit, we can see what forms this quarter of the Earth and the orientation of the capacitor and the inductor. To the east of this circuit, the crust acted like a capacitor, expanding east, storing the energy of the impact by forming the delta Y transformer that shaped the Pacific Ocean. The triangle of the delta is why the islands of the Pacific are in the shape of a triangle, called the Polynesian Triangle. To the west of the resistor circuit, the crust acted like an inductor, expanding like a bulb to absorb the impact, and in doing so, forming the Indian Ocean in the process. Induction is a magnetic field of storage, and it has a very rounded shape, which is what is present in Sean's illustrations of the crustal expansion of the Indian Ocean. We can use his illustration to place the charge node of the memristor over the Indian Ocean expansion, and suddenly we can see the circuitry that formed the inductor segment of the crust of the Indian Ocean. These first two junctions represent internal storage from the apocalypse through crustal expansion. And when the fair question comes up, where did the material come from to cover these new ocean floors? Mythology says that Athena wears the skin of her victims. The sea floor of our oceans comes from the surface floor and oceans of Venus. But not all oceans were created the same. Here in the Atlantic Ocean, we don't find a circular central nodal expansion. That's because the Atlantic is not an internal expansion ocean. The crust of the Earth didn't split and expand here to form the Atlantic Ocean. Rather, the surface of the Earth was pulled up in a cold cathode vortex, at the other end of which formed the moon. Like the lift of the wing or the pull on a sail, it is the low pressure that creates the movement. Opposite the high pressure impact, a low-pressure front formed, pulling up the surface of the Earth, and this began the formation of the Atlantic Ocean by taking the Earth up from the middle out by using electrostatic force and ripping up the surface. This is why the Atlantic has just one main central expression. The Indian Ocean was an internal crustal expansion. The Pacific Ocean was an internal crustal expansion. But the Moon was an external crustal expansion and represents the ground Atlas sat on while he held up the Earth. The Moon became, for a short time, the ground in the electrical system. And that shell at the foot of Atlas is the N of our now N-doped planet. The positive pressure here caused a massive negative low pressure over here, forming the Moon from the backside of the Earth. The fractal Earth is one of the most influential new findings in the coming science revolution. Check out his work and subscribe to a well-articulated model of our expanding Earth. Links are all down below. Don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and a comment down below, and subscribe for all the latest from Dr. Stinky McDougal's lab. Peace out, everyone.